The plane was plummeting rapidly. Ethan's white moonlight. Lily was so terrified she had a heart attack. I stopped Ethan from unbuckling his seatbelt and snatched the medication from his hand, throwing it to her. Yet, he still became the only casualty of this flight accident. After his death, we got engaged, married, and I became pregnant. It all happened as if it was meant to be. But when I gave birth, complications arose. Struggling desperately on the operating table, I cried out for help, only to see Ethan, now the hospital's vice president, standing expressionless as he watched me lose every bit of life left in me. Emma, now you understand how terrifying it is for a patient to be left to die, don't you? His cold words echoed in my mind as the darkness closed in. I realized then that he had always hated me for surviving. This time, I let him unbuckle his seatbelt. Go ahead. Fulfill your duty to save lives. The plane was plummeting rapidly. Screams and cries filled the cabin, rising and falling in waves. Except for Ethan. No one noticed Lily clutching her chest, quietly pleading for help. The in-flight announcement repeated calmly. The plane is experiencing a malfunction. Passengers, please fasten your seatbelts. Ethan raised his hand to unbuckle his seatbelt without hesitation, as if he had no regard for his own life. It wasn't some heroic duty, it was about saving Lily. If I hadn't accidentally found a photo of him kissing her, I might have believed his actions were motivated purely by medical ethics. But the truth was, he couldn't bear to see his beloved white moonlight die. As the plane jolted violently, passengers without seatbelts were flung into the air and slammed back down, many suffering serious injuries. Worried about him getting hurt, I tried to stop him, prying his hands off the seatbelt buckle. I threw the heart medication to Lily and reminded Ethan that even if he wanted to save others, he should first ensure his own safety. The accident left 1 dead, 5 critically injured, and 8 with minor injuries. Lily was the fatality. That very night, Ethan proposed to me. We've been through life and death together, he said. His tone so heartfelt that I was moved to tears. But when I confronted him with the photo of him and Lily, he became enraged, shoving my pregnant self down the stairs. All the affection he had shown disappeared in an instant, leaving only a searing hatred. Emma, you're a doctor. Watching a patient die in front of you, don't you have nightmares? I hemorrhaged and was rushed to the hospital, lying on the operating table, weak and desperate. I waited for a doctor to arrive, but the only one who entered was Ethan. He looked at me, emotionless, as my life ebbed away. Emma, now you understand how terrifying it is for a patient to be abandoned, don't you? Selfish as you are, you finally know the pain Lily felt. Good. After 10 years of marriage, his eyes held no pain or pity for me, only venomous disdain that cut me like a blade. In this second life, I made way for Ethan to save Lily. Emma, good thing you didn't stop me this time. He sneered, his words sending a chill down my spine. Ethan had been reborn too. This time, Lily's luck was exceptional. After taking the medication and receiving CPR from Ethan, she gradually recovered. But Ethan wasn't so lucky. Without his seatbelt on, he was violently thrown during the turbulence, hitting his head and losing consciousness. His body was riddled with fractures, especially in his hands. He became one of the critically injured passengers. After 3 days in the ICU, he was transferred to a regular room. The doctor warned that if he didn't wake up within 7 days, he would become a vegetable. Ethan's mother cried and screamed at the hospital, accusing me of not looking after her son. She grabbed my clothes, wailing, "He's my only son. I raised him alone all these years. And now this happens. Emma, if anything happens to Ethan, you'll have to pay with your life." I sneered. Ethan's father had passed away early, and his mother had raised him single-handedly, a gifted student. He had excelled in academics and eventually earned his doctorate with ease. My family's connections had helped him secure a vice presidency at the hospital. Yet his mother always felt no one was good enough for her precious son. Not even me, the daughter of the hospital's president. A crowd gathered, many pulling out their phones to record. Not far away, the door to a hospital room opened, and a woman stepped out, her face obscured by a mask and cap. I recognized her silhouette instantly, pointing toward Lily. I yanked my hand free from Ethan's mother and said coldly, "If you want someone to pay, go after her. That's Ethan's beloved. He unbuckled his seatbelt to save her. And now he's unconscious because of it." Lily froze. When she heard my words, she turned to flee. But Ethan's mother lunged at her, slapping her hard. Her mask and cap were torn off, exposing her face to the cameras. "Lily, it's you," Ethan's mother screamed, clawing at her face. "If he doesn't wake up, I'll kill you." "Are you crazy?" Lily shouted back, her face twisting in annoyance and fury, no longer the delicate image she usually portrayed. "I didn't beg your son to save me. He threw himself at me like a desperate fool. What does that have to do with me? I only came to check on him out of kindness. But with your attitude, forget it." Lily stormed away, leaving Ethan's mother collapsed on the ground, seething with hatred. Following me into the hospital room, she hissed, "I don't care. Both of you are responsible. If Ethan doesn't wake up, you'll both take care of him. And me." I rolled my eyes, glancing at Ethan's battered and bruised face on the hospital bed. He was so swollen and disfigured that he was almost unrecognizable. If he knew the kind of things Lily had said after everything he sacrificed for her, I wondered how he would feel. Unfortunately, he was unconscious and completely oblivious to the world. Clicking my tongue in regret, I turned to leave, but then I saw something strange. A faint, translucent figure shaped like Ethan sat up from the bed. Startled, I stumbled backward, stepping on Ethan's mother's foot. "Watch it. Why are you stepping on me?" she snapped, furious, as she swatted at me. Her hand went straight through Ethan's spirit. She couldn't see him, and I didn't dare to look directly. I kept observing his ghostly figure from the corner of my eye. First, he looked shocked, then terrified. Finally, he rushed toward me and waved a hand in front of my face. "Emma, can you see me?" he asked. To my surprise, I could hear him. Was it because I had been reborn? I pretended I couldn't see or hear him, and his expression turned to disappointment as he slumped back onto the edge of the bed. Muttering to himself, Ethan said, "Where's Lily? How is she? Did I manage to protect her this time? Why hasn't she come to see me?" A few nights later, I entered the hospital room during my shift. Ethan's mother was asleep, exhausted after keeping vigil by his bedside. Ethan's spirit sat next to her, mumbling, "My mom's worn out from all this. And Emma doesn't even bother helping out. What kind of girlfriend is she? She can't even stick with me through hard times." His tone grew darker and more resentful as he continued, apparently assuming no one could hear him. "If it weren't for her parents pressuring me, I'd never be with someone like her. She's as stiff as a brick. No softness or tenderness at all. Lily, though even her tears could melt my heart into a puddle. If Emma hadn't interfered, Lily and I would have been together long ago. We'd be perfect for each other." Hearing this, my heart chilled. To Ethan, my past efforts to pursue him, and my parents' support for his career, were nothing but burdens to him. Without their help, he never would have become the youngest vice president in the city's medical system. In our past life, he always acted courteous and respectful in front of my parents, but there was not an ounce of gratitude in him. Anger burned in my chest, but I kept my expression neutral as I jotted down Ethan's condition in my notes, clicked my pen shut, and left the room. As I was leaving, Lily barged in with several reporters and loudly declared, "I want to clarify the rumors circulating online. I'm grateful to Mr. Carter for helping me that day, but claims that we were in a relationship are baseless. Back when we were in school, Ethan did pursue me, but we never dated. I never expected to run into him on the flight, and his actions were truly surprising." She wiped away a crocodile tear, appearing utterly pitiful. Ethan's spirit, however, seemed struck by lightning. He lunged forward, trying to grab her arm, but his hand passed right through. "Lily, what are you saying? What do you mean we never dated? You were even pregnant with my child once," Ethan cried, devastated. Seeing his miserable state, I couldn't help but feel a surge of satisfaction. Meanwhile, Lily turned to Ethan's mother, holding her hand with feigned sincerity. "Mrs. Carter, I truly appreciate Ethan's help that day. If there's anything I can do for you, please don't hesitate to ask." she said sweetly. Ethan's mother glared at her and then coldly said, Lily. About Ethan's medical bills. Lily's face paled, but she forced a smile. Don't worry. I'll cover all of it. And since Ethan got injured saving you, you'll also take turns staying with him at night. Right. Ethan's mother pressed further. Lily hesitated for a moment before reluctantly nodding. I can arrange for someone to stay with him. The reporter's live stream was flooded with comments accusing Lily of putting on an act. Under pressure, she agreed to personally take shifts. I had been enjoying the show quietly until Ethan's mother suddenly pointed at me in front of the cameras and said, Emma, you're Ethan's girlfriend. You're going to marry him eventually, so why don't you take this chance to practice caring for him? You and Lily can take turns staying with him. Her tone made it sound as though it was only natural for me to comply. I couldn't help but laugh. Mrs. Carter, I forgot to tell you, Ethan and I already broke up. Ethan's spirit stared at me in disbelief. Broke up? Who agreed to that? When did this happen? Ethan's mother raised her voice. Indignant. You're leaving him now. Just because he's unconscious? How heartless can you be? He's only temporarily in a coma. Once he wakes up, his future will still be bright. And you'll regret it. Ethan's spirit fumed, his translucent form flickering. Emma, wait and see. You'll regret it when Lily and I live happily ever after. Don't you dare come crawling back to me claiming you love me, I said coldly, turning away without sparing a glance at the cameras pointed in my direction. From this moment, I resolved to give him the freedom he seemed to crave. My world was now vast and boundless, free of his chains. Lily stayed behind to care for Ethan, while his mother reluctantly returned home to rest and recharge. Not long after, a colleague approached me with gossip. Emma, your ex-boyfriend is in bad shape. That Lily? Isn't she some minor influencer? She gained a few followers after the plane crash but clearly doesn't care. She came in with her team earlier, and I thought she genuinely wanted to help. Turns out, it was all for show. Just now, Ethan wet himself, and when asked to help clean him up, she rolled her eyes and said, How is that my problem? The colleague sighed. Poor guy. He almost died saving her. On my way past Ethan's room, I noticed the door was ajar. Inside, Lily was setting up a photo shoot, the smell of urine heavy in the air. Pinching her nose, she waved her hand to clear the stench, but the moment the camera focused on her, she broke into a smile, even going as far as to prop Ethan up in bed. Her rough movements caused blood to seep from the fore on his hand, but she ignored it entirely. They say comatose patients need to be turned regularly to avoid bed sores, she said to the camera. I've even learned the proper technique just for this. She demonstrated while recording her tutorial. As soon as the cameras were off, she let go, letting Ethan fall back onto the bed with a loud thud. Wrinkling her nose in disgust, she muttered, That's enough footage. I can't take this anymore. The smell is awful. If it weren't for appearances, I wouldn't have come here. Now I'm stuck paying all his medical bills. What bad luck. I didn't ask him to save me. Ethan's spirit stood frozen, his face a mask of disbelief. With every word Lily uttered, his translucent figure grew fainter until, after she kicked the hospital bed in frustration, muttering about how it was his own fault for not wearing a seatbelt, his spirit vanished entirely. But then, his finger twitched. Ethan had woken up. The attending doctor, who was also my mentor, pulled me along to Ethan's room. It was packed with people, buzzing with excitement. Lily was there, front and center with her team, acting overly affectionate. Ethan, you're finally awake, she exclaimed, clasping his hand. You have no idea how worried I was. I've been taking shifts with your mom to care for you. I've even lost weight. She pouted, looking fragile yet determined. But I don't mind at all. You got hurt saving me, and this is the least I could do. She looked like a delicate flower, pretending to support Ethan with her frail body. If I hadn't seen her true colors, I might have believed her performance. Ethan's expression, however, turned cold. He pulled his hand away abruptly and looked away. Lily, I don't want to see you. Leave. Lily froze, panic flashing across her face. What's wrong? Ethan, did I do something to upset you? Tears welled up in her eyes. rolling down her cheeks as the live stream continued. The comment section exploded with outrage. What's Ethan's problem? Lily's been tirelessly caring for him. And this is how he treats her. Poor Lily. She doesn't deserve this. What a jerk. Ethan, unable to explain the truth about his spirit leaving his body, gritted his teeth and forced out a lie. I'm not feeling well. I need some peace and quiet. The doctor frowned. The patient just woke up and needs rest. Ethan's mother quickly shooed everyone out of the room, but not before the cameras captured Lily's tearful departure. Most people watching pitied her even more. I turned to leave as well, but Ethan called out to me. Emma, can we talk? No, I replied without looking back. From that day on, I avoided his room completely. Even when we crossed paths in the hallway, I would quickly walk away, pretending not to see him. Still, thanks to my gossip-loving colleague, I was well informed about his situation. Apparently, Ethan's mother had set up a social media account for him. The story of his heroic rescue had gained him a significant following. Though the comments were divided, many praised him, but others harshly criticized him. One day, Lily visited him again, and somehow, the two ended up being paired as a romantic couple online. To my disbelief, this publicity stunt garnered even more followers. People were now romanticizing their supposed love story. Two young people reconnecting years later, surviving a plane crash together, and rekindling their love. It was like a plot out of a novel. My colleague was furious on my behalf. If I didn't know you were his ex-girlfriend, I might have shipped them too. A childhood crush, reunited on a plane, enduring life and death together. It's the perfect drama. But knowing the truth makes me sick. I paid no mind to the gossip, choosing instead to focus entirely on my studies. In my previous life, I had been a top student, earning scholarships every year. My mentor once told me that with 10 more years of hard work, I could become one of the leading surgeons of my generation. But that ambition was derailed when I married Ethan. I settled into the role of a housewife, managing the household while Ethan busied himself with work. I gave up my medical career, much to the disappointment of my mentor, who eventually severed all contact with me. Every New Year's gift I sent was returned unopened. I thought my sacrifice would bring us happiness and fulfillment. But I never realized that not only did Ethan feel no love for me, he harbored deep resentment. In this life, I decided to devote all my energy to my future. When I approached my mentor to reconcile, I was surprised to find Ethan already there. Pushing aside the wave of nausea, I handed over a gift. My mentor raised an eyebrow with a knowing smile. So, you two have broken up. I opened my mouth to confirm, but Ethan put his arm around my shoulders. We just had a fight, he said smoothly. Emma hasn't forgiven me yet. In front of my mentor, he suddenly stood up and knelt on one knee. Emma, I've thought a lot about this. I can't live without you. Over the years, we've been through so much together, and we get along so well. These past weeks without you by my side, I felt a deep void in my life. Today, with our mentor here, I want to take this opportunity to propose. Emma, will you marry me? He looked up at me with a self-assured smile, as though he was certain I couldn't possibly refuse. He presented a simple, plain ring, likely less than 3 carats and with no embellishments. Typical Ethan. Always stingy. In my previous life, his family's financial struggles didn't stop him from buying me a 3-carat diamond ring. I had been so moved I cried, convinced he had poured all his romantic energy into that moment. He had proposed with balloons, roses, and even a princess tiara. I truly believed he would cherish me forever, so I had agreed without hesitation. I willingly stepped into the grave of marriage, promising to support him while he pursued his ambitions. But my willingness became a weapon he used against me. The beautiful dreams I once had turned into a sharp blade that tore me apart, leaving me restless and broken. Now, Ethan reached for my wrist to slide the ring onto my finger. I flicked my hand, sending the ring tumbling to the ground, where it rolled away and disappeared into a crack. His face darkened. Emma, what is the meaning of this? How long are you going to keep this up? He stood, his tone impatient. Yes, I was with Lily before, but that's all in the past. If the rumors online are upsetting you, those were all arranged by my mom for publicity. I can delete my account for you if it bothers you so much. He spoke as if this was a great concession, even daring to question me. I used to think you were so understanding. What's gotten into you this time? Our mentor, unwilling to involve himself in our personal drama, excused himself to the kitchen to prepare fruit. I remained seated at the table, calmly unwrapping the gift I had brought. Without looking up, I said, Ethan, we've broken up. I'm not joking. He grabbed my arm. Broken up? I didn't agree to that. I stopped what I was doing, turning to meet his gaze with cold, steady eyes. Ethan, if you were given another chance, knowing what kind of person Lily truly is, would you still choose to save her? As a doctor, what is your duty? To save lives no matter the cost? Or is there more to it? He froze, his face pale as he staggered back against the wall. A look of realization and confusion crossed his face as he murmured, Emma, you too. I stood and continued, my voice firm. Ethan, I'm not a saint. I won't forgive you. Ethan left early, his expression complicated. My mentor didn't press for details but instead placed a human anatomy model in front of me. The joints, organs, and pressure points were all in their proper places, a perfect representation of the human form. Textbooks only teach the basics, he said. In reality, anomalies exist, like a heart growing on the right side or someone having two uteruses. Models show the most typical cases, but life is full of exceptions. Even the golden ratio isn't universal. You asked about a doctor's duty. There's no definitive answer. A doctor's role is to save lives, but whether to sacrifice oneself to save another is a personal choice. Each choice is valid, and each deserves respect. He poured a cup of tea and pushed it toward me with a gentle smile. Emma, if you haven't found your answer yet, there's no rush. Your life is still long, and you have plenty of time to figure it out. I suddenly recalled the afternoon I received my graduate exam results. I had come across a news article about an earthquake that devastated a small town. Buildings collapsed into deep cracks in the earth, leaving countless victims trapped beneath the rubble. Meanwhile, in a distant city, medical teams were making their final preparations to rush to the disaster zone. My mentor had led the team during that mission. Even as aftershocks continued, they wrote letters of commitment, prepared their wills, and were ready to risk their lives to give hope to the people trapped in the disaster zone. During a brief break, a sweat-drenched journalist managed to snag my mentor for a 10-second interview, pulling down his mask, which left deep red marks on his face, his skin pale and swollen from the long hours. He said with worry-filled eyes, I don't have time to say much, but I just hope my team comes back safe. He then immediately went back to the rescue efforts, working tirelessly under the starlit skies. My mentor had been chosen for me by my parents, and I had hesitated about studying under him, but after reading that news report, I sent him a heartfelt email, asking to become his student. In the following years, I accompanied him to various missions, big and small. Yet, later, I confined myself to the narrow world of family life and forgot how my heart once beat passionately for the duty of saving lives. The next time I saw Ethan was at the hospital. I was delivering documents to the department head and overheard them talking privately. The department head looked troubled. Ethan, it's not that we don't want you back, but after a comprehensive evaluation, we've concluded that your current condition isn't suitable for returning to surgery. You know how important a surgeon's hands are. How about this? We can transfer you to a logistics role. What do you think? Ethan's face darkened immediately. He swept all the documents off the desk. And if the desk hadn't been so heavy, he might have overturned it as well. What do you mean by this? My abilities are well known. Putting me in logistics is a complete waste of talent. Before I could stifle a laugh, the department head chuckled, unable to hold it back. Twirling a pen between his fingers, he said, Ethan, you've been flattered so much you've started believing it. Sure, your education is decent, but at our hospital, you could throw a brick and hit 2 Harvard graduates. You think you can just waltz in here, go straight into surgery, and then land a consulting role in 2 years? Please, it's only because of your abilities. Right. He sneered. Let me give you some advice as a senior. If you're with that influencer, Lily, then focus on that. Make your money from the influencer gig. Without this hospital, what are you really? Reality is harsh. Ethan's arrogance was unshaken. He always believed that the things he felt restrained him. The people who held him back were, in fact, the wings that allowed him to soar. Without those wings, no matter how high his starting point, he would crash and burn. Humiliated, especially upon realizing I had overheard everything, Ethan's face turned ashen. He stood abruptly and stormed out. "Don't underestimate me. I broke through medical barriers and solved research challenges on my own intellect. I don't need this place to prove myself. I won't settle for logistics. I quit." He left without a backup plan. Meanwhile, I had dedicated myself entirely to my studies, from assisting in surgeries to eventually leading procedures. I climbed steadily. I reclaimed the knowledge I had once let slip and gained even more under my mentor's guidance. Lessons and experiences he had never taught me before. My personal skills grew rapidly, leaving me no time to follow Ethan's latest drama. That is, until a coworker rushed in, waving their phone and shouting for me to come see the commotion outside the hospital. Apparently, Ethan's mother had caused a scene. She and her accomplices unfurled a long banner at the hospital entrance, accusing the hospital of being heartless. It read that Ethan had injured his hand while saving someone. Yet the hospital dismissed him without compassion because he was no longer useful. She claimed they were struggling to make ends meet and couldn't even afford to eat. My coworker rolled her eyes. That mother and son are disgusting. When the drama with Lily was hot, they were raking in cash from all the attention. Now that their popularity has faded, and no one's buying it, they're coming after the hospital. Ethan arrived in a hurry, ostensibly to take his mother away. I thought he was being sincere, but in front of the live streaming cameras, he put on quite the show. "Mom, don't do this. My hands can't perform surgery anymore, so it's only fair that the hospital let me go. It's okay. I'm still healthy. If I can't work here, I can always deliver food or drive for a rideshare app. There are ways to make money." The internet exploded with sympathy for Ethan and outrage against the hospital. I couldn't believe how well he played the victim. Ethan Carter, a delicate little white lotus. My parents, however, saw through it. "Let's just pay them off and put this to rest," my father said. I, on the other hand, couldn't swallow my anger. My mother patted my hand. "Think of it as paying to see someone's true colors. We used to think Ethan was a decent kid. Who knew he'd turn out to be so vile?" She sighed. "Good thing you broke up with him. If you had married him and found out too late, we'd be heartbroken." Her words brought tears to my eyes. In my past life, after I died, my parents aged overnight, blaming themselves for not protecting me enough. Later, when they discovered the truth, they sought revenge by running Ethan down with their car, killing him. They didn't escape the law and spent the rest of their lives in prison. In every timeline, my parents gave everything for me. Now, in this life, they still worried about me. Their love was unwavering, no matter the circumstances. They have always loved me unconditionally, and this time, I won't stay silent. Ethan and Lily arranged to meet me at a cafe, their intentions clear from the start. As soon as I sat down, Lily sweetly but firmly stated, "I want $5 million, not a cent less." She smiled as if this was a casual, reasonable request. "And you?" I turned coldly to Ethan. He avoided my gaze, staring at the table as if hoping it would swallow him. After a long pause, he finally said, "My demands aren't that high. I just want to return to the hospital, continue consulting patients, and not be relegated to logistics for the rest of my life." I chuckled softly. It was almost amusing to see Ethan still clinging to his so-called professional aspirations. Taking a sip of my coffee, I shrugged. "Sorry, but I can't agree to either of your demands." I met Ethan's startled gaze. "You know better than anyone, Ethan, that your claims about the hospital being unfair are baseless. The hospital never said they would fire you. They offered to transfer you to logistics because your hand injury made it unsafe for you to operate. And yet, you turned around and accused them of betrayal. Isn't that laughable?" I stood, grabbing my bag, ready to leave, but Ethan grabbed my arm, his voice desperate. "Emma, please listen. I don't need money. Just let me return to the surgical department. I'll even forego operations. I just want to stay on the front lines." "Ethan, are you insane?" Lily suddenly snapped. stomping her stiletto heel into his foot and kicking him hard. We agreed on 5 million. I took a risk using my most popular account to livestream for you. I won't take a penny less. Ethan shoved her back reflexively. Lily stumbled, falling backward and slamming her head against the wall. She clutched her chest, her face pale as death. In that instant, my mind raced through a storm of thoughts. Resentment, ethics, morality, the value of life. The scales tipped back and forth in my heart until I remembered the vow I made when I chose to become a doctor. To honor life, treat all equally, and respect humanity, even when faced with a heinous criminal. It's not a doctor's role to judge or punish. That's the law's responsibility. A doctor's duty is to preserve life, and I will always hold that sacred. What are you standing there for? I pushed Ethan aside, my expression serious. Where's Lily's medication? Ethan hesitated, frozen in place, impatient. I knelt beside Lily and began performing CPR. Ethan remained motionless, as though he wasn't a doctor and the woman before him wasn't someone he once claimed to love so much that he would sacrifice everything for her. How pathetic. Thankfully, I found her medication in her coat pocket, quickly administering it. Lily, still pale, regained some strength and muttered weakly, "Don't think saving me will make me forgive you. Emma, if it weren't for you chasing after Ethan, he wouldn't have left me. He loved me. He just couldn't let go of your family's power and influence. Why should someone like you, with money and privilege, always be above others?" Her words left me unfazed. The truth no longer stirred any emotions in me. I simply placed the pill bottle back into her bag and replied calmly, "Don't think saving you means I'll let you go, either. Life's value surpasses all else, and it's not a doctor's place to judge morality." Later, I pieced together security footage of Ethan rejecting the logistics transfer and audio recordings from our cafe meeting. The completed video exposed the truth in full detail. I also included a lengthy statement explaining the events from start to finish, ensuring every fact was laid bare. Then, I hit send. The internet erupted. Public opinion surged like a tidal wave. Some condemned the hospital for allowing its reputation to be tarnished by a few bad apples, while others criticized Ethan and Lily harshly. The incident sparked heated debates about the ethical boundaries of doctors and whether one should sacrifice themselves for others. Amid the chaos, I stepped back, no longer interested in the uproar. I had already found my answer when I chose to save Lily. My duty as a doctor compelled me to save her, but my moral compass led me to use the law to protect myself and bring justice to those who wronged me. Ethan and Lily were convicted of fraud. Lily's account was confiscated by her company, and her contract termination left her with substantial debt. Ethan's mother, deemed an accomplice, received a 1-year suspended sentence. Ethan's mother pleaded with me multiple times, even kneeling in the street during her final attempt. Exhausted, I agreed to visit Ethan in prison. He wore a prison uniform and had a shaved head. When he saw me, he immediately clung to the bars, his face lighting up with desperation. "Emma, save me. I know I was wrong. I was so stupid, blinded by Lily's lies. I thought she was kind, but she manipulated me. I've realized my mistakes. I spoke to a lawyer. They said if your family writes a letter of forgiveness, I might still have a chance." I cut him off coldly. "You called me here just to say this?" His face was filled with regret, but his eyes were dark and unreadable. I could tell he hadn't truly changed. Somewhere in his heart, he still saw me as the girl who would forgive him with a single word, who would take him back no matter what. But that was because I loved him. And now, I didn't. I turned and walked away, ignoring his anguished screams. Outside, my mentor called. "Ready to go?" "All packed and waiting," I replied. "A few days ago, I received an email about a program to bring medical services to remote areas. The destination was a village called Saltwater, and I had just passed my board exams. Without hesitation, I signed up for the year-long assignment. My mother disapproved. Why not stay here, advance your skills, publish research papers, and tackle medical challenges? Isn't that every doctor's ultimate dream? Your father and I can help you achieve that much faster." It was a tempting offer, but I chose a different path. I wanted to become someone like my mentor. One day, I hope to wield a scalpel not only to pave the way for a brighter era in Chinese medicine, but also to gently carve out the warmth of life. Welcome to Tiny Storytime YT channel, where completed thrilling stories are updated daily. Don't forget to subscribe. Let's begin the story. My boyfriend, Ethan, insisted on diving into a complex underwater cave to retrieve the body of his childhood friend Lily's younger brother. Despite my attempts to dissuade him, he was determined. Worried about accidents, I had no choice but to accompany him. We found the body, but on our way back, we got lost. Ethan, knowing that carrying the body would use up a lot of oxygen, refused to abandon it out of fear of disappointing Lily. In the end, he took my spare oxygen tank, ensuring his safe return to the surface with the body, while I perished in the dark, cold depths. My body floated aimlessly in the cave, never to see sunlight again. When I opened my eyes, I found myself back in time at the exact moment before we entered the cave. Once again, I was at the underwater entrance, 17 meters below the surface. Ethan was in front of me, gesturing for me to lead the way through the narrow passage. It made sense since I was smaller and had more diving experience. However, memories of my previous death flashed through my mind. Ethan had sacrificed me for Lily's request to retrieve her brother's body. A cold fury surged within me. Without hesitation, I turned and swam toward the surface as fast as I could. In deep waters, ascending too quickly can cause decompression sickness, leading to severe bodily harm. But I couldn't care less. I knew Ethan was following me, and it felt like a deep-sea monster was chasing me, ready to drag me into endless darkness if I slowed down. Desperate to escape, I ignored the risks and surfaced. Lily was waiting on the shore. When she saw me, she frowned in annoyance. "Why is it you? Where's my brother? And where's Ethan?" Her tone suggested she never expected me to survive. Dragging myself onto the shore, I removed my mask and greedily inhaled fresh air. The rapid ascent caused excruciating pain in my joints, leaving me sprawled on the ground, barely able to move. Lily, seeing my condition, callously kicked at my limp body. "Hey, I'm talking to you. Shay, how dare you come up alone? You promised to bring my brother back." "Useless. Where's Ethan? Is he in danger? Get back down there and save him." Her entitled tone and shameless demands disgusted me. I couldn't fathom how someone could be so brazen. Lily's brother, Lucas, had died while exploring the underwater caves of Roshan Lake. After discovering a passion for diving during a post-graduation trip, he joined our diving club at Lily's request. Young and overconfident, Lucas dismissed my warnings about the dangers of cave diving. Unlike open water diving, cave diving requires a completely different level of skill and preparation. Lucas lacked the qualifications to even apply for a cave diving license. Roshan Lake's underwater caves were notoriously treacherous, like a giant labyrinth. Despite my stern warnings, Lucas was full of hubris. "I learn faster than anyone else," he boasted. "What takes you hours to grasp, I master in minutes. Don't hold me back with your mediocre standards." Ethan supported him, saying, "You're being overly cautious. Lucas has been doing great in the open water. It's just a cave, he'll be fine." Lucas eventually snuck into the cave alone, equipped with subpar gear and no dive buddy. His reckless decision led to a tragedy that could have been avoided. Rescue teams tried multiple times to recover his body, but were unsuccessful and nearly met with their own accidents. The search was called off, leaving Lily devastated and bitter. She blamed me, even though I had been the one who most strongly opposed his actions. As I lay on the shore, too weak to resist, Lily continued trying to push me back into the water. Just then, Ethan surfaced. Lily's face lit up when she saw him. She rushed over to grab his hand and pull him ashore. Ethan removed his mask, his expression filled with guilt. "I'm sorry, Lily. We couldn't enter the cave." Lily's demeanor shifted instantly. Gone was her anger and impatience. Her voice quivered as tears filled her eyes. "I was so scared. Ethan, thank God you're okay. I knew it was too dangerous down there. It's enough that you tried." I didn't expect much to begin with. Seeing her cry, Ethan panicked. "Don't worry, Lily. It's Shay's fault for holding me back. Once she regains her strength, we'll go back down." He turned to me, lying on the ground. "Shay, you have 10 minutes to recover. Then we're diving again. His voice was cold, leaving no room for argument. I was speechless. Fortunately, my body had recovered slightly. I propped myself up and began removing my diving gear. I'm not going back down there. I have something important to take care of at home, I said coldly. Lily grabbed my arm, refusing to let me leave. Who said you could go? So dangerous down there. How can you be okay with leaving Ethan to dive alone? I sneered. Oh, so it's dangerous for Ethan. But it's not dangerous for me? Am I not a person too? Ethan looked a bit awkward but turned to Lily with a gentle tone. Lily, maybe Shay really does have something important to do. Why don't we wait until she's done? And then we can dive back in together. No, Lily snapped. What could possibly be more important than my brother? If it weren't for Shay, my brother wouldn't be dead. He wouldn't be floating all alone in that cold, dark water, unable to rest in peace. I ignored her and turned to leave, but she grabbed my arms with both hands, trying to drag me back toward the water. I don't care what you have to do today. You're not leaving until you bring my brother back and kneel to apologize. She must have forgotten that I work out daily to maintain peak diving fitness. I'm as strong as an ox, while she's as fragile as a flower. Gritting my teeth, I yanked my arm back sharply. She went flying like a kite with its string cut and plunged into the water, flailing wildly. She was quickly rescued by Ethan, who held her protectively. He turned to me, furious. Shay, what's your problem? Lily's delicate. Do you want to hurt her too? The word delicate stung. So, Ethan also thought I was responsible for Lucas's death. Fine. Let him think what he wants. I already told you. I have something important to do. My grandma made dumplings, and she's waiting for me to come home and eat them. You two can play your games without me. Without looking back, I walked away. Ethan's voice rang out behind me, full of righteous indignation. Shay, how can you be so selfish? Lucas is still down there. And you're going home to eat dumplings? Is that what you call something important? Get back here right now. Put your gear on. And dive with me. If you don't, I'll call off our wedding next month. Lily, coughing from her near-drowning episode, joined in. Ethan, you don't need to beg this despicable, useless woman. You're a 6'2" man. Are you telling me you can't handle a dive without her? That's ridiculous. Just go by yourself and bring my brother back. Ethan, though clearly frustrated, still had a sliver of reason left. Lily, you've taken the diving course. You know it's too dangerous to dive alone. We need at least 2 people for safety. Don't worry. I'll find another buddy to go with me. And I promise I'll bring Lucas back. His words gave me an idea. I turned around, smirking coldly. Lily has a diving certificate. Why not go together? You two grew up as childhood sweethearts, trusting and supporting each other. You're the perfect pair to handle a dive like this. Ethan frowned, sensing the sarcasm in my tone, while Lily shrank closer to him, her eyes darting nervously. I shrugged, unimpressed, and walked away. Honestly, Ethan wasn't suited for cave diving. His large build made maneuvering through the narrow passages difficult. As for his diving skills, he couldn't hold a candle to mine even if he trained for another decade. Bringing Lily, who didn't follow rules, was a recipe for disaster. They'd end up just like Lucas. Ethan and I were supposed to get married next month. When I was in college, my parents died in a car accident, leaving me devastated. Diving was my only solace, a quiet escape into the deep. 2 years ago, Ethan joined my diving club. He was tall, handsome, and followed me around like a puppy, constantly asking questions about diving. Once, during a dive, my breathing regulator started leaking. I signaled to Ethan to surface early, but without hesitation. He shoved his own regulator into my mouth and held his breath as we ascended. He almost ended up in the hospital for it. That act of selflessness cracked open the walls around my heart. And over time, I grew used to his presence. On the day we got engaged, I genuinely believed I'd found someone who shared my passion for diving. But now, it all felt like a joke. Since Lily moved back to our city, Ethan prioritized her over everything. Me, our wedding, and even my life. At home, my grandma's freshly made leek and shrimp dumplings were steaming hot on the table. I grabbed one, ignoring the heat, and shoved it into my mouth. Hugging my grandma tightly, I began sobbing uncontrollably. Images of my last moments underwater flashed through my mind. Grandma returning home after my funeral, sitting silently at the table, staring at a plate of untouched dumplings all night. Thank goodness I was given another chance. If not for this twist of fate, I might have made her endure the pain of losing another loved one. Grandma mistook my tears for grief over my parents and gently held me, patting my back. It's okay, Shay. Everything's okay now. Grandma's here. You don't have to be afraid of anything. Her familiar scent of soap grounded me, making me feel alive again. Wiping away my tears, I resumed devouring the warm, comforting dumplings, savoring each bite. After finishing, I rested for a while, letting the sense of safety sink in. My joints still ached from decompression sickness. After a hospital visit, I was admitted for a few days for observation. During my stay, I blocked all contact with Ethan and his family. I had no intention of getting involved with them ever again. However, on the day I was discharged, I received a call from a club member. As expected, Ethan and Lily had an accident. From what I gathered from my friends at the club, here's what happened. Ethan called several people, asking them to accompany him to retrieve Lucas's body. But after Lucas's accident, numerous attempts had been made to search the cave, all ending in failure due to its labyrinthine structure. Some divers even faced life-threatening situations. One female team member barely made it out alive, only to be slapped by Lily upon surfacing. Lily screamed at her for being useless. No one wanted to get involved with her again. But Lily wouldn't relent. She cried and begged Ethan to take her with him. Unable to resist her tearful pleas, Ethan made the most foolish decision of his life. Surveillance footage from the club showed that yesterday morning, Ethan and Lily entered the southern equipment room. When they emerged, they were fully suited in diving gear. At 12:06 p.m., they dove into Roshan Lake. They hadn't been heard from since. By the time I received the call, 24 hours had passed. The critical rescue window for drowning victims had long closed. It was likely that Ethan and Lily, like Lucas, were now stuck in some crevice, out of oxygen, their bodies cold and lifeless. I had no intention of getting involved, but as Ethan's fiancée, and because security footage had captured my earlier confrontation with them at the lake, the police summoned me to the scene for questioning. From afar, I could see the yellow tape cordoning off the area. A crowd had gathered by the lakeside, wailing and crying. The moment I arrived, a sharp-featured, domineering woman charged at me. She raised her hand to slap me, but I quickly caught her wrist and flung it aside. Stumbling awkwardly, she turned even angrier. How dare you dodge? You wretched jinx. You killed my brother, and now you've killed my sister. If I don't beat you to death today, I'll disgrace the Gu family name. I recognized her, Gu Shanshan, the eldest sibling of Lucas and Lily. I had seen her once before. After Lucas's accident, the police stepped in to restrain her, but they couldn't stop her from hurling a barrage of vulgar insults. Nearby, Ethan's parents were present. His mother sat on the ground, shaking and sobbing uncontrollably. I knew it. I had your birth chart analyzed. You're cursed. That's why both your parents died in that car crash. I warned Ethan not to marry someone destined to bring bad luck, but he wouldn't listen. And now look what's happened. Gone was the composed, aloof woman I had met when Ethan introduced me to his family. Back then, she had looked down on the expensive gifts I brought. Bird's nest, luxury skincare, and Moutai liquor, with disdain, sneering that only rural relatives would value such things. Apparently, she had decided long ago that I was cursed. Ethan's father, a generally kind and rational man, tried to calm her, yapping, "Don't say such things. This has nothing to do with Shay." For a moment, I thought he might defend me, but then he turned to me with a hoarse voice, speaking gently. "Shay, I know how much you cared for Ethan. You wouldn't want him to be left down there, would you? Perhaps you could go and recover his body for us. The official rescue team has said it's unlikely they'll locate the remains. You're our only hope." My heart sank. "Uncle Sue, please don't spread lies. I never said I would retrieve Ethan's body." Hearing this, Gu Shanshan glared at me, her face a mix of disbelief and fury. "What do you mean you won't? You killed him. You won't even bring him back? How heartless can you be? You evil little wretch. I rolled my eyes. You said it yourself. I'm just a young woman. One person dies in that cave after another. Why should I risk my life for them? I'm not going. And there's nothing you can do about it. What? Are you going to drag me into the water with you? Ethan's mother, after some coaxing from her husband, softened her tone. Playing the good cop, she said, Shay, I heard you're the best diver in the city. You're our only chance to recover Ethan and Lily. I know you loved Ethan deeply. How could you bear to leave him to become fish food? If it's danger you're worried about, I'll buy you a life insurance policy worth $1 million. If anything happens to you, your family will be financially secure. Isn't that fair? I laughed bitterly. Sorry, Auntie, but my life is worth far more than $1 million. I've spent more than that on diving equipment alone. Do you really think I'd sell my life for such a paltry sum? With that, I turned and left, ignoring the murmurs of the onlookers. She's so cold-hearted. Her fiancé dies, and she won't even lift a finger to recover his body. And he died while trying to recover someone else's. Such a good man. And he ends up like this. I heard he was a rising star. With a 6-figure salary. They were supposed to get married next month. Now he's dead. And she's already turning her back on him. What a waste of such a promising young man. The situation didn't end there. A video of the incident went viral locally. In it, I was shown sneering and taunting Ethan's grieving parents, saying, I've spent more than $1 million on diving. Do you think I'd care about your measly hush money? The video, heavily edited with dramatic and bloody captions, was titled, Diver's Fiancé Refuses to Retrieve Bodies. Instead flaunts wealth to extort grieving families. The sensationalized and twisted narrative enraged viewers, fueling public outrage against me. At the end of the video, ominous red text appeared. Shay Yang, don't you have a conscience? When you dream at night, aren't you afraid they'll come back to haunt you? The video spread rapidly, leaving me completely disgraced. I received countless private messages filled with venomous insults. Worse, it gave the Sue and Gu families a glimmer of hope. Divers from across the country and abroad, unaware of the full story, flocked to Roshan Lake. They sympathized with Ethan, believing he had died because of me, and volunteered to join forces to recover the bodies of those who had perished. In the middle of the night, I received a chilling call from Gu Shanshan, after a blood-curdling recording of a ghostly woman's wails played. Her mocking voice followed. Shay, who do you think you are? Now even Georgia, an internationally renowned cave diving expert, is coming to recover Ethan and Lily's bodies. There's no need for someone as lowly and useless as you. You think you matter? Ha! Georgia was indeed a legend in cave diving, an expert in this highly specialized field. If anyone could recover the bodies, it would be him. But I couldn't understand why some people were already popping champagne before anything was done. At 8:30 the next morning, I made a call to the Bureau of Cultural and Tourism Affairs. Director Zhang, this is Shay Yang. There have been too many accidents recently at Roshan Lake's underwater caves. And now large crowds are gathering to attempt dangerous recoveries. I strongly recommend sealing off the cave entrances to prevent further diving-related tragedies. The unique geology of our region featured numerous deep, uncharted underground caves, attracting countless visitors. Over the years, I had collaborated with the Bureau on multiple occasions to evaluate the safety of these sites, helping to eliminate potential diving hazards. Director Zhang took my suggestion seriously. For the sake of public safety, they promptly sealed the underwater cave entrance at Roshan Lake with sturdy steel bars and issued an official announcement. Access to the caves was strictly prohibited, except for government-authorized personnel. No matter how skilled the divers were, they wouldn't be able to enter this death trap anymore. Online discussions about me continued to intensify. My personal information was spread recklessly by anonymous accounts, accompanied by increasingly slanderous claims. Some alleged I had once worked as an escort, saying, 4 years ago, I hired her for an entire month. She's great in bed and really knows how to please men. Others claimed I had targeted Ethan, a successful young professional, for his money. The rumors painted Lily and Ethan as a sweet couple who had been torn apart by my interference. They said Ethan paid for all my diving expenses and that now I refused to dive to recover his body while extorting his parents for $7 million. Worse, People began dragging Lucas into the narrative. They accused me of enticing him to dive out of jealousy toward Lily, leading to his death. Overnight, I became a villainess reviled by all. First, I dismissed these accusations as baseless fury from bitter, powerless individuals. But then, the slander escalated to an unbearable level. They say her parents were killed in a car accident on the highway because they were deliberately speeding and ended up crushed beneath a steamroller. To this day, there are still black stains on the asphalt where their blood was mixed into the tar. It happened just 200 or 300 meters past Chingcheng Bridge. Check it out if you pass by. Another wrote, I did a fortune reading on her. In her past life, she was a commander of Unit 731, responsible for unspeakable atrocities. This lifetime, her family and loved ones are doomed to tragic deaths as karmic retribution. If you're a relative of hers, stay away. You might be next. This post gained traction, spreading rapidly in group chats and online forums. Even my grandmother's classmates at her senior center forwarded it to her. She was so enraged her blood pressure skyrocketed. I rushed her to the hospital, where the girl at the payment counter clearly recognized me. She slammed my paperwork down. You filled this out wrong. Fix it. After redoing the form, she made me rejoin the line, forcing me to go back and forth 4 times before grudgingly accepting my payment, muttering under her breath. She added, who knows if this form is contaminated with that disgusting Unit 731 virus. I pressed my throbbing temple, suppressing the urge to explode. Once my grandmother was settled, I stayed up all night compiling evidence to defend myself. The next morning, I posted a thorough, well-organized rebuttal on social media. First, I included records from my previous job, which I had taken at a friend of my father's company after graduating college. To cope with the grief of losing my parents, I had thrown myself into work, often staying late into the night. I attached timestamp clock-in and clock-out logs showing my 9 to midnight work hours, proving they didn't align with the timeframes mentioned by the escort accusations. Next, I provided police reports from my parents' accident, which had occurred on the suburban Ingbin Avenue. They had swerved to avoid a boy who darted onto the road, leading to the crash. The official reports made it clear there was no malicious speeding or involvement with the steamroller. Finally, the most damning evidence: footage from the surveillance cameras in the home Ethan and I had purchased together. The cameras had been installed to monitor contractors during renovations, and I had never mentioned them to Ethan. In one clip, Ethan lovingly sent me off, only to return minutes later with Lily. The two made out on the couch before moving into the kitchen, their bodies practically inseparable. After waking up from my near-death experience, I had naively believed their relationship hadn't crossed the line. But the footage told a different story. Their closeness while gearing up for their last dive suddenly made sense. Dressing in full diving gear often required help, and it was customary to ask someone of the same gender or a trusted partner for assistance since divers often wore minimal clothing underneath. The footage revealed their familiarity and ease, confirming they had been intimate for far longer than I had realized. Though nauseating, the evidence was exactly what I needed. The release of this evidence caused an uproar online. The explicit, damning footage of Ethan and Lily inflamed public opinion, shocking and titillating the onlookers. Taking advantage of the uproar, I released more evidence piece by piece. Among these was the full version of the infamous video where I dismissed the offer of a 1 million yuan insurance policy. The recording, secretly captured by my phone in my jacket pocket, clearly exposed the vile attitudes of Ethan's parents and Gu Shanshan. I also shared my hospital records and receipts, proving I had been hospitalized for decompression sickness for several days after our last dive attempt. These people, who had once been my diving companions, claimed I was morally obligated to recover the bodies out of gratitude for past camaraderie. But during a recovery attempt for Lucas's body 2 weeks prior, I had discovered that my oxygen tank had been tampered with, rendering it unsafe. Forced to ascend quickly without proper decompression, I had suffered severe physical consequences, which left me unable to participate in further recovery efforts. I publicly expressed my regret over this but emphasized the need for understanding. As the new evidence emerged, I no longer had to expend energy defending myself. Witnesses came forward to vouch for my late parents' character, recalling how they had been generous employers, often helping staff in times of need. Others unearthed the origins of the smear campaign, tracing it to an account under the username ShinshinGo, which bore the profile picture of Lucas sitting at the center of a Gu family portrait. Even Lucas's old social media posts surfaced, filled with arrogant and offensive remarks. In one post, he mocked my record as a female diver at Roshan Lake. Who knew the lake's cave diving record was held by a woman? What a joke. Are all the guys at the club eating dog crap? Useless cowards. Watch me conquer this pathetic lake. Shay just doesn't want me breaking her record, but I'll crush it. And soon, she'll be the one crushed under me, too. Haha. Some online sleuths speculated that it was Lily who had tampered with my oxygen tank, attempting to harm me rather than the other way around. Others claimed that Ethan and Lily had likely conspired to kill me, and their deaths were a result of their own recklessness. Conspiracy theories spiraled further, with some pointing out that the ominous arrangements in the wedding footage suggested Ethan had set up a spiritual trap in my home to harm me. While the sheer creativity of these theories astounded me, I didn't shy away from leveraging them to my advantage. Within a week, the trio, once pitted as tragic victims, were now reviled as villains. Even children wanted to stomp on them like cockroaches. While publishing the evidence, I also filed a police report. At the station, Gu Shanshan refused to back down. This wretched woman killed my brother and sister. So what if I tarnished her reputation? She deserved it. And you cops, are you on her payroll? Why aren't you arresting her but instead coming after me? I'll report you. Her defiance was essentially a confession of her crimes, slandering and defaming me, coupled with her attempt to smear law enforcement, left her facing up to 3 years in prison. Ethan's parents, meanwhile, no longer dared to show their faces. My grandmother, thankfully, recovered quickly and was discharged. As time passed, online discussions about me subsided, and life seemed to return to normal. The events of my rebirth felt like a distant, surreal dream. Yet every attempt I made to return to diving triggered uncontrollable trembling. My body refused to descend, a grim confirmation that I had indeed once died in the depths of darkness. I decided to step away from diving for a while, letting time heal my trauma. However, just as I began to move forward, something entirely unexpected happened. One evening, after a jog, I was walking along a quiet path on my way home. I called my grandmother, asking if she could bring our dog out for a walk, but no one picked up. Grandma was always glued to her phone, scrolling through videos. It was unusual for her to miss a call. Feeling uneasy, I quickened my pace toward home. Suddenly, the sound of a speeding car came from behind. As it approached, the screech of brakes pierced the air. A van swerved to block my path. Before I could react, several men in black jumped out, grabbed me, and threw me into the vehicle. I struggled, but a sharp pain pricked my left arm. A needle. I felt cold liquid coursing through my veins. Before I could scream, darkness engulfed me. When I awoke, it was pitch black. Judging by the silence, it was deep into the night. My hands and feet were tightly bound, and my grandmother lay unconscious beside me. Her chest rose and fell steadily. She was alive, sitting across from us, gazing down with a sinister air. Was someone I hadn't expected. Ethan's father. The once kindly man with silver-framed glasses now seemed like a stranger. He ripped the tape from my mouth with a violent tug, making me wince. "What do you want?" I demanded. "Ethan wasn't killed by me. Abducting me won't bring him back." He suddenly grabbed my chin, his gnarled fingers as cold and slimy as a snake. I froze, paralyzed by the sheer malice emanating from him. "You really are a beauty. No wonder Ethan chose you as his bride." His voice was thick with venom. "But now he's dead. His body is rotting at the bottom of that lake. And you're still here, calm and composed. You're no ordinary woman." He leaned closer, his foul breath brushing my face. "Your fiancé, the man who was supposed to be your soulmate, is drifting in that icy water, turning into a skeleton. And yet you had the audacity to say you couldn't go down and retrieve him. I want to carve out your heart to see if it's black." Terrified by his sudden outburst, I forced myself to stay calm, my mind racing. My top priority was ensuring my grandmother's safety. "What have you done to my grandma?" I asked, my voice trembling. "If anything happens to her, I won't care what happens to me." A cruel smile spread across his face. "She's fine. Just sedated. But if you don't bring Ethan's body back, I can't guarantee she'll stay that way." He stomped his foot, shaking the floor beneath us. His forehead gleamed with sweat, and his unhinged rage was palpable. From the rocking sensation, I realized we were likely on a boat above Roshan Lake, with the cave sealed and no professionals willing to dive. He had resorted to this desperate measure, kidnapping me and using my grandmother as leverage to force me into the water. The Sioux family's darkness ran deep. One tried to take my life in the past, and now the other wanted to send me into the abyss once again. I lifted my head, took a deep breath, and steadied my voice. "Fine. I understand, but I need professional equipment. Without it, I can't guarantee my own safety, let alone bring your son back." Ethan's father grabbed me and shoved me toward the cabin door. As expected, we were on a yacht. The deck was cluttered with oxygen tanks and various diving gear. "Little girl, this is the best diving equipment money can buy. Don't try anything funny. If you don't bring my son back before dawn or dare to escape to shore, I'll drown your grandmother alive, and she'll die 10 times worse than my son." The urgency in his voice was palpable. By dawn, tourists would start gathering, making it harder for him to act. He couldn't afford to wait any longer. He pulled out a Swiss Army knife and cut the plastic ties binding me. Moving quickly, I grabbed a wetsuit and gear before retreating to the cabin to change. Under his cold, menacing gaze, I prepared myself and entered the water. The underwater world was pitch black. I could only feel the currents and the occasional brush of fish against my body. Though I had experience with night dives, my fear of diving, amplified by memories of my past death, still lingered. The cold seeped through my wetsuit, and I started trembling uncontrollably. My breathing grew rapid, and the increased oxygen consumption triggered an alarm on my equipment. I had heard this sound before, during my final moments in my past life. But this time, I still had a chance. Forcing myself to focus, I analyzed the situation. Ethan's father, driven mad by grief, was unpredictable. If I tried to escape now, my grandmother would be in grave danger. His demand was simple: recover Ethan's body. I remembered where I had found Lucas's body in my previous life. Ethan's build was similar to his, so I could retrieve Lucas's body to distract Ethan's father. Once his attention was on the corpse, I could call for help and alert the authorities. With that plan in mind, I calmed my breathing and steadied myself. Turning on my dive light, I swam toward the cave entrance. The steel bars blocking the entrance had been destroyed. I slipped inside and navigated through the tunnel. After a narrow passage, I arrived at a wide cavern, a junction with 6 or 7 different tunnels branching off. This was where previous divers had struggled, unable to determine which path Lucas and Ethan had taken. In my previous life, I had found Lucas's custom marker near the southeastern entrance. It was a unique line etched with his name. Without hesitation, I headed for the same entrance. The current grew stronger as I swam through the narrow passage. The rushing water carried me past several forks until I reached the narrow spot where Lucas's body had been lodged. But to my surprise, his body was no longer there. Perhaps fish had stripped the remains, and the current had carried the skeleton further into the cave. Fortunately, the large oxygen tanks Ethan's father provided still had ample supply. I decided to press on and search deeper. The current became more turbulent as I ventured further. The walls around me widened into a vast, eerie chamber. Stalactites hung from the ceiling, and dark fish swam in slow, menacing circles, adding to the unsettling atmosphere. Then, I noticed something unexpected. The surface of the water broke above me. The cave had opened into a pocket of air, fed by an underground river. Hope flared within me. If this river connected to an exit, I might be able to escape to the surface and call for help without having to return the same way. But in my excitement, I failed to consider another possibility. The river grew shallow, revealing patches of solid ground. I climbed ashore, removing the spare oxygen tanks and equipment I wouldn't need immediately. I tucked them into a recessed area of the cave wall and continued onward with just the essentials, in case the path led back to water-filled tunnels. As I approached a sharp bend, I heard faint noises, footsteps. The sound of wet shoes echoed through the dark cave, growing louder with each step. A chill ran down my spine. and I quickly turned off my dive light. Crouching in the shadows, a startled bat flapped past, its screeches piercing the silence. I clenched my jaw, trying not to make a sound. The footsteps drew closer, faster now. Then, I heard a voice. "Ethan, is that a ghost? I'm scared. Are they here to take our souls?" "Don't be afraid, Lily. Maybe it's someone here to save us. We need to check it out." Ethan and Lily's voices echoed through the tunnel as they approached. The passage wasn't wide, and they would undoubtedly notice me when they rounded the corner. A twisted idea formed in my mind. Just as they turned the corner, I flicked my dive light back on. The beam cast an eerie glow upward, illuminating my face in ghastly shadows. My expression, pale and grim, twisted into a chilling grin. "Ah, a ghost." They screamed in unison, their terror palpable. I bared my teeth in an eerie grin. "Surprise. It's me, Shay." Their terror melted into elation as they recognized my voice. "Shay, I knew you'd come to save us," Lily exclaimed, tears of relief streaming down her face. "We're finally getting out of here alive." Getting out alive? That wasn't guaranteed. From the moment I heard their voices, my thoughts had been racing. First, I was stunned they were still alive. Then anger surged. Why had these two survived while so many others perished? It felt like the universe had turned a blind eye. But now my mind was clear, tinged with a hint of satisfaction. Ethan's father's words echoed in my head. "If you don't bring back my son's body, you and your grandmother will join him in the grave." He didn't ask for living people. He wanted a corpse. Cold, lifeless, incapable of feeling anything ever again. Just like I had been in my previous life. That's what he wanted. Then I'd deliver exactly that. Perhaps fate had kept these two alive for this very moment, to give me the chance to settle the score myself. The area was rich in oxygen and had a steady supply of fresh water. They had survived by catching the giant catfish in the underground river. Aside from the monotony, they could have lived for months. They even seemed to have enough energy to indulge in their twisted relationship. Ethan excitedly recounted how thoughts of me had kept him going, oblivious to the fact that I could clearly see his hand interlocked with Lily's behind his back. Lily, on the other hand, gazed at me with feigned admiration, her lips curling into a smug, taunting smile. I cut Ethan off mid-sentence. "Enough. I've only got one spare oxygen tank with me. It's enough to get one person out. The other will have to wait for the next rescue team. Decide who goes first." Lily stomped her foot, her voice dripping with entitlement. "Why should we decide? Just give us your tank, and Ethan and I will go together. We've been stuck here for days. You haven't suffered like we have. Staying a little longer won't kill you." Without a word, I slapped her across the face, the sound echoing through the cavern. "Shut up. Who do you think you are? Why don't you ask Ethan if he even knows the way out? If he had half my skill, you two wouldn't have been trapped here in the first place." Lily's face turned crimson as she clutched her cheek, casting a tearful glance at Ethan, who frowned and scolded me. "Shay, was that really necessary? Just explain things to Lily. Violence isn't the answer." "Fine," he continued. "Let her go first. I'll wait here for the next rescue team. Will that satisfy you? Honestly, Shay, you're so petty. What's with the jealousy?" I shrugged nonchalantly. "Whatever." Ethan helped Lily put on the equipment while she clung to me. "Wait, Shay, what about my brother? You need to bring him up with us." So that's why Lucas's body wasn't in the spot I remembered. It turned out they'd found it earlier and stashed it in a deeper part of the cave. The rancid smell of decay suddenly made sense. I gaped at her in disbelief. "You think you can carry your brother's body out of here with your skills?" Lily looked equally astonished. "Of course not. You'll carry him. Just tie him to yourself, and it'll be fine." "Are you insane?" I snapped. "Do you have any idea how dangerous that would be?" "I don't care," she retorted. "I won't leave my brother behind, no matter what." My fists clenched, knuckles cracking audibly, even in the dim light. Ethan must have sensed my fury. He quickly stepped between us to shield Lily. "Shay, don't be unreasonable. Lily just can't let go of her brother. It's not right to hold that against her." In a flash, I slapped Ethan twice, the force leaving him stunned. Before he could recover, I delivered a sharp kick to his groin, sending him crumpling to the ground. You two want to stay down here forever? Fine by me. Enjoy your romantic getaway. I turned and headed deeper into the cave, ready to dive further. Ethan scrambled after me, grabbing at my gear. I spun around and kicked him again, forcing him to let go. Cursing under his breath, Ethan finally relented. Fine. I'll take Lucas's body and follow you out. We'll call for help for Lily once we're back on the surface. I sat on a rock, watching as Ethan prepared his gear. He and Lily whispered to each other, their voices filled with promises and reassurances. Ethan even swore an oath to come back for her the moment he reached the surface. I smirked, knowing full well they were clinging to false hope. Swimming upstream was far more grueling than the trip down. The current pushed against us, and I clung to rocks along the way, following the markers I'd left. Ethan, burdened with Lucas's corpse, struggled even more. His physical weakness and rapid oxygen consumption became evident as we continued. Eventually, we reached a fork in the tunnel. I glanced at my markers and chose the correct path. Ethan, too exhausted to think, followed blindly, cradling Lucas's body as if it were a fragile treasure. Every so often, he would touch the bracelet Lily had given him, a dreamy expression crossing his face. The tunnel began to widen, and he seemed to believe we were close to freedom. For some reason, I could almost hear his thoughts. Once we're out, I'll marry Shay. She's beautiful, wealthy, and risked everything for me. Even if I don't love her as much anymore, I'll spend my life repaying her. Of course, I'll still see Lily on the side. It's not her fault she's less educated and from a poor family. Once I'm married, I'll just use Shay's money to make it up to her. During the week, I'll say I'm working late and sneak off to see Lily. Weekends will be for Shay. A little for everyone. I'll have to start working out. Though, keeping two women happy will take effort. Maybe Shay can hire me a personal trainer. Being a man isn't easy. I clenched my teeth, fury burning deep in my chest. He stumbled forward blindly, his head slamming into the rock wall. Feeling around in the darkness, he realized he had reached a dead end. In my previous life, we had taken a wrong turn on the way back and ended up at this exact dead end. At the time, my spare oxygen tank had been full, more than enough to return to the surface. But Ethan, carrying a body, had consumed oxygen at a much faster rate. His tank wasn't sufficient for the journey back. He refused to abandon the corpse, willing to sacrifice my life for Lily's admiration and worship. Now, fate had reversed. This time, it was Ethan who had followed me into this death trap, and I, ironically, was his guide to the underworld. Ethan turned toward me, only to see me slowly backing away, waving goodbye. Disgusting man. Farewell. I mouthed deliberately, removing my regulator to form the words with my lips. Then I flashed him a radiant smile, a smile that sent chills down his spine. What? What does she mean? Farewell? What's she planning? Panic gripped him. His mind raced with fear and suspicion. Had I discovered his betrayal with Lily? Could I really want him dead over something so small? He instinctively opened his mouth to lie, to explain himself, but only ended up inhaling water. Panicked, his breathing grew erratic, rapidly depleting his oxygen. The alarm on his equipment blared. With only a third of his oxygen remaining, there was no way he could make it back to safety. Desperate, he turned and swam after me, chasing the glow of my dive light. But he wasn't just chasing me. He was after the spare oxygen tank I carried. In my past life, he had mercilessly grabbed my ankle, yanking me back as I tried to escape. He had wrested my spare tank from me, leaving me to die. But this time, he wasn't so lucky. 6 days of living off raw catfish in the depths had left him weak and exhausted. Carrying Lucas's corpse only drained him further. As he fumbled to untie the rope securing the body, I seized the moment to widen the gap between us. Then, I kicked up a cloud of sediment from the lakebed. The murky water engulfed the area like smoke, obscuring visibility and blocking the light from his dive torch. Through the haze, I could still sense the turbulence of his desperate movements. The energy a dying man could muster was astonishing. In his delirium, his thoughts turned to our past life. So it was Shay who killed me last time. That's why she hates me so much. But killing me over this? She's insane. Fine, let her have her revenge. But maybe I'll be reborn too. In my next life, I'll destroy her, take her fortune, and live the life I deserve. The final thought that crossed his mind was strangely serene. Being reborn doesn't sound so bad. And then, silence. Before his oxygen fully ran out, Ethan was overcome by one last question. How could I have led him into this dead end when it was so far out of the way? The spare tank I carried surely wouldn't last for my return trip. Was I truly willing to die just to kill him? I wasn't. Calmly, I swam back toward the underground river. There, I retrieved the spare tank and underwater scooter I had hidden earlier. Ethan's father had been thorough, ensuring I had advanced equipment to bring back a body. As I assembled my gear, Lily emerged from the shadows, her face lighting up with hope. "Ethan, you came back for me," she cried, rushing forward. I ignored her, continuing to prepare my equipment. When she realized it was me, her expression darkened. "Shay, why are you here? Where's Ethan? Did you take him to the hospital?" "No," I said flatly. "He's dead." "You're lying," she screamed, grabbing my arm, her nails digging painfully into my skin. "Ethan's an amazing diver. There's no way he's dead. You're just saying this to upset me." I yanked my arm free, sending her sprawling to the ground. "I'm not lying. He's dead because he was weighed down by your brother's body. Such a tragedy, really. Imagine how horrible it must have been." "No, this can't be true," she wailed. "It's your fault. If you'd carried my brother's body, Ethan wouldn't have died. I'm going to report you to the police." I crouched down, flashing a chilling smile. "Oh, Lily, how can you be so stupid? Do you really think it's wise to provoke me right now? Tell me, besides me and the dead Ethan, who knows you're still alive? Who's coming to save you?" Her eyes widened in horror as I dove into the water, turning on the scooter. Her anguished cries echoed through the cavern, fading as I sped away, returning to the dead end. I knew I needed a body to placate Ethan's father and ensure my grandmother's safety. Lucas's body was already prepared, tied with ropes and ready to be transported. It was far easier to manage than Ethan's larger frame. Using the scooter, I quickly made my way back to the cave entrance. The efficiency of the equipment impressed me. I'd have to get one of these for myself someday. By the time I surfaced, the first light of dawn was breaking. A few early risers strolled along the shore. Ethan's father leaned anxiously over the boat's edge, scanning the water. When he saw me emerge with a body, his face lit up with joy. He reached out eagerly to help, but I ignored him, paddling to the shore. Despite the pain from my rapid ascent, I mustered the strength to climb onto land and shout, "Call the police. There's a murderer on that boat." As passersby scrambled to help, Ethan's father, too preoccupied with inspecting the body, failed to stop me. When he realized the corpse wasn't his son, it was already too late. The police had surrounded him. My grandmother was rescued shortly after. Unharmed, we were rushed to the hospital, where both of us made full recoveries. Ethan's father was arrested and charged with kidnapping, assault, and coercion. Ethan's mother, upon hearing the news, collapsed and never recovered. The incident drew attention from the authorities, who reinforced the cave seal with steel plates, ensuring no one, living or dead, could enter or exit again. I returned to diving after some time, though I avoided caves and focused on open water dives. I participated in rescue operations and body recoveries, as well as assessments of diving safety at tourist sites. I encountered no further dangers, adhering strictly to safety protocols. Human curiosity about nature is limitless, but without respect for its rules, we invite nature's wrath. I hope everyone learns this simple truth.